Okay, I'm gonna assume that we're live here on YouTube. This is my first time using this streaming software on my new Mac, so I've had to reset everything from scratch. Anyway, so this is super spontaneous. I have been getting a lot of questions over the last few days about just telescopes in general, and I realize it's probably because Prime Day is today, and there's a ton of sales on these telescopes. Um, hey, Frezzy. That's good. I just got a comment. That means we're actually live. Okay. Um, yeah, so I know most people are going to start watching this as a recording. Most people that watch this won't be watching it live. So as we let people join, I just want to go over sort of the five steps. Oh, wow. I'm just infinite me here. Okay, let me close out that so you can see my screen. Okay. Actually, I'm going to go to learntostargaze.com because I just want to talk about the five sort of rules for what you should expect in a telescope. Okay. Again, I'm new to this OBS thing. I just realized my chat disappears when I did that. I wanted this to stay up. So how do I hide this and keep the chat? Okay. What if I do this? Okay, there we go. Yeah, hopefully you guys can still see me. I can see your chat. You can probably see the chat. Okay. So what are the five rules when you're buying a telescope? So basically, rule number one, and this is just from learntostargaze.com. I posted it there. You want to make sure it has 4 inches of aperture. So here's an example of a telescope that fails every test. And there's a ton of these for sale today on Prime Day. And they all use the same lens. They're all basically the same form factor. 4 inches of aperture. So this is about 2 inches of aperture. So this would not really be a good telescope. The resolution on the planets and everything would be really low. Does the telescope come with a red dot finder? And so a lot of these telescopes, especially like this one, I'm assuming you can see it in the little corner there, would come with this little finder scope here, which wouldn't be really good. They're really hard to use. And when you move left and right, the image to the finder scope usually goes in the opposite direction. It's really a pain. So what you want, and maybe I will go to OBS here and make myself bigger. You know what? I don't know if can you guys see me when I do this? Can you guys still see me? Let me shrink this. I don't know what you guys see. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you can see me right now. Okay, anyway. Yeah. So the second requirement is a red dot finder. So basically these take a 2032 battery, and I don't know if you can see it, but it projects a red dot onto the sky. And that makes it much easier for beginners to find things in space. Okay. Can the telescope's mount move effortlessly left and right and up and down? And this one is basically a requirement that says, is the telescope effortless to point? And so a lot of these beginner telescopes on camera tripods, for example, you might have, here's my YouTube camera. You might have a camera tripod like this with a telescope mounted on it. That's not going to work very well because you need really fine pointing. So if you see like one of these, setups here with a telescope, it's probably not going to work very well. So that's another, that's tip number 3. Can the telescope balance precisely on the mount and stay fixed in place when released? That's another, that's mainly a point against those mount and yoke systems. So that's where you have like the telescope sits in this yoke like this, and then it's got a rod that connects to, I don't know, there's this little screw here. It's kind of weird. Anyway, you want to avoid those because the telescope will jump around. Like things move in the sky, as the Earth turns. And so if you're trying to repoint a telescope that's either on a camera tripod or one of those rod and yokes, it'll bounce around, it'll jump because it'll stick and you'll have all these issues. And can the telescope point straight up? So almost all of the telescopes that look like this, they can only go about this high. And the interesting thing about looking at stuff in space is stuff in space doesn't get good until it's above a certain degree above the horizon. Professionals, they use 60 degrees as a rule. So you're only going to observe things here in the sky. So if this telescope can only get up this high, then you're not going to be able to even meet the minimum requirement for like quality of image, because you really want to look at things when they're high in the sky, not when they're close to the horizon. Okay. So if we look at these telescopes this morning, basically that is what we're going to be comparing them against. And I haven't updated this list in a long time, but basically on learntostargaze.com, I have a list of example telescopes here. But this is Amazon Prime Day. And so what we're going to do is basically walk through some of the telescopes that are on sale. In the comments, drop a telescope in there, and I can look at it. See, I can just see from the Be Official, is the Celestron something 70 a good telescope? 70 is that aperture. So 4 inches is 100 millimeters. So like I can see the 70 is less than 100, so automatically that would be a no in terms of a beginner telescope. There's exceptions for like if you're paying $1,000 for an astrophotography telescope and it's less than 100, yeah, but we really want to separate astrophotography from stargazing. So what I do for the most part, I'm going to bring up this so I can actually see the comments again. I'm basically focusing on telescopes for stargazing. So as soon as you add a camera, you leave the hobby altogether of stargazing and you enter astrophotography, which is a whole different set of requirements. And then you basically need a different telescope depending on what you're taking photos of. So you typically use a different telescope for planets than if you're doing galaxies and nebula, or even a different telescope between nebula and galaxies. So, hey Tim, good morning. All right, let me just open up. I'm just curious. Again, I'm new to this OBS thing. Yeah, so I don't even know how many people are on here. Does it say at the bottom? No idea. Not that important. Anyway. Oh, there's a comment. I'm going to close this. All right. Bought a used Celestron Astromaster 130 EQ, decade-old one models with the permanent red dot finder. Yeah. So the Astromaster 130 EQ, I think I have that one open here. There's an example of, oh, that's the 114, but it basically looks like this. And so that is interesting in that it's definitely not recommended. Like if you go to telescopewatch.com, let's see, telescope watch 130 EQ, they'll have a big not recommended warning on it. And basically it's all about that equatorial mount that really just kills the whole telescope and makes it not fun. So I like to rate my telescopes on fun factor. Beginner telescopes on EQ mounts, if there's EQ in the name, that just screams not a fun time to be had for me. Anyway. Yeah, next question. Would you recommend a Celestron 6 SE? So that's a person or one of StarSense models. So basically that is a telescope like this, Schmidt-Cassegrain. And they're great. The magnification is really high. And that makes things a little bit harder to find. And that's why it helps to have it on like that SE mount or a StarSense mount. Yeah, so the advantage of the SE version is that it's motorized and it's tracking. The disadvantage is there's a setup time and that goes along with that. And also there's usually comes along with it like, half an hour of troubleshooting. So every time you're going to set it up, you're going to have to troubleshoot it. You're going to have to align it. Your alignment might fail the first time. You do it again. A lot of learning curve with the buttons. Whereas StarSense, you just use your phone and the app is pretty darn simple, assuming it works. Some people have trouble getting the app to work. Assuming the app works, StarSense is just brilliant. Setup takes 10 seconds and you bump the telescope, take it to the other side of the property. Doesn't matter. StarSense is great. And so that's the first example I had here. This is one of the most basic StarSense ones. I'm going to ignore the versions that say LT because they fail all 5 of those tests I started talking about at the beginning of the video. Gosh, this chat just keeps disappearing on me. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's really, StarSense is really fun. as long as it says DX in the name. If it doesn't say DX, less fun. But again, the 6SE, I had one of those open here. Scroll up. She's talking about this one. Yeah. So here's the 6SE. That's actually a really great price on that these days. I'm not sure if that's discounted at all for Prime Day. So the other advantage of this is that the mount is pretty good. Some people, I don't know if I'd advise this, use this mount to transition to astrophotography. So there's a way to put a wedge under this, and some of them include the wedge. I can't tell if this one does. Because to do astrophotography, you have to, raise the base of the mount to your latitude. It's going to be at an angle. And that way the telescope can track things as they move across the sky and not rotate them. So as these telescopes track in this mode, alt-azimuth, it follows objects around the sky, but they twist in the frame. And so you can't really take long exposure photos with it. But I have seen people modify this mount into an astrophotography mount. So there's that. All right, let me pull up this chat again. I really wish it would stay in the foreground. Maybe I should just leave this up like that. I don't know. All right, is there a technique to shoot DSO without tracking? So you can capture DSOs, that's deep sky objects, but you're not going to get, it's difficult to get good images like that would compare to one's tracking. Like even a telescope this big, let's say it was an astrophotography telescope, would get a better image than a telescope that was not tracking. Like I have a YouTube video where I take a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy with this and it looks pretty good because it's tracking. Way better than if you were to stack non-tracked images. So yeah. So the technique is to take really short exposures, like 0.5 seconds, and add thousands of them together. It can be done. I know the YouTube channel Astro Biscuit has a thing on how to do it, but again, I don't think the quality is that great. Yeah. Okay. So Tube Hero says I finally got a 12-inch Dobsonian. And from Bortle 6, both the eastern and western veils are surprisingly easy to see with an O3 filter. That's cool. Yeah, I think I've seen the veils from... I haven't tried it recently. I also don't know if I have an O3 filter at home. Would have one at the university. Yeah, that's cool. So congratulations on the 12-inch. Those are great fun. And what's cool about the fall is that all the summer triangle is visible until like December, and that's where that's where the veil is. A lot of fun stuff there. The NGC 7000, which has the North American Nebula and the Deadpool Nebula, that's in there. Future NBA player 09, 10-inch Dobsonian. Yeah, that's awesome. So you're wondering how to collimate it? The easiest way is to buy one of those $20 lasers on Amazon. And they do a pretty good job. The challenge, go back to Amazon. The challenge with the collimation lasers is that technically these need to be collimated. At least, especially if you're doing astrophotography with like a Newtonian, which is a pain. They don't come collimated. And there's these little Allen wrench things in here. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. For visual observing, you basically just stick this in where the eyepiece goes and turn the knobs until on the bottom of the telescope until the laser's in the bullseye. That's it. First, you turn the knobs on the front of the telescope on the primary or on the secondary mirror. So I don't know if you can see my screen here. Yeah, I'll hold this up so I can see myself. Yeah, so there's 3 screws here. So you put the laser in, you turn these 3 screws until the laser beam is centered on the big mirror at the back. And then you turn, this one can't be collimated, but usually there's 3 screws here, and you turn these screws until the laser beam is centered in the bullseye. That's how you collimate a Dobsonian. Really quick. Someone's asking, when is my next video? So I'm waiting on telescopes, either plural or singular, from All Star Telescope. So they're going to send me a scope. And I've been working on this Saturn video for, I don't know, weeks now. But a lot of it, I've just been troubleshooting my gear. And so my other Schmidt Cassegrain telescope, like this one, it was way out of collimation. And so I 3D printed what's called a Tribatnoff mask to do it. Just a challenge. So a lot of like things that were slowing me down. So yeah. So another question on collimating. Could you tell me how to do it with a collimation cap? Yeah. So a collimation cap is basically just take the one of the caps that goes in here as long as it's black. And so no eyepiece in the hole. You drill a hole in the middle of the cap and you look in. And what you do there is you make sure, step one, that the mirror, so pretend you can't see the reflection in the mirror at the bottom, you make sure that that's centered. And so you do that by turning these screws. So you look in here and you center the mirror, not the reflection, but the mirror by turning these 3 screws. That's step one. Step two is you look in here and you see the spider arms, right? So this is collimated. Basically it comes collimated. Those spider arms need to be the same length. And so you adjust the screws at the bottom until those spider arms are all equidistant. So that's the 2-step process for that. Good questions. Okay. Let's see if I missed any up here. An optical 6x30 should also work. So 6x30, that person's talking about binoculars. Binoculars are great fun as long as you have dark skies. It also helps to know what you're looking for ahead of time. So it's fun to explore the Milky Way with binoculars and you'll run into stuff. You have a better appreciation if you know what you're looking at when you run into it. So a lot of astronomers will say, don't buy a telescope, buy binoculars. I really disagree with that. And the reason they say that is because a lot of people will buy a crappy telescope like this and then come back to them and be like, I can't see anything, right? And so it's like, well, you should, if that's you, yeah, maybe you should have got binoculars. But the thing about binoculars is you're probably not going to use them from the city just because it's awkward, a city or town. Like you're not going to walk around where people can see you and use binoculars. It's just kind of awkward. And the other thing about binoculars is you really do need dark skies. Oh, one, you can't see the planets very well. They just look like specks unless you've got image stabilized and zoom in your binoculars. The moon is kind of small in binoculars, and so you can't really explore it as well. And you need dark skies. So when you have dark skies and you know what you're looking for, that's when binoculars are fantastic for stargazing. There's a lot of targets that are just big. The Andromeda Galaxy doesn't fit in a telescope, looks way better in binoculars. And so the other things that look good in binoculars are that you wouldn't even think of looking at in a telescope is like the star Murphak, for example. You have Cassiopeia, the big W, and you go down a bit into Perseus, and there's this giant like star pattern. You can almost not see it with the naked eye, and then you look in the binoculars and it's like the Pleiades, which are the 7 sister stars, but like hundreds of them. It's a really cool feature in the sky. And then you have the large Sagittarius star cloud, the small Sagittarius star cloud, really good in binoculars, all sorts of targets, but you got to know what you're looking for before you do it. So for anyone that's, I guess we're 20 minutes or so into this video, my next book, which is a sequel to 50 Things to See with a Telescope, this book is now almost 11 years old. But again, really, really popular. I'm doing a binocular version of this book. And so I've been working on that for about 6 months now. I have camera gear that simulates the binocular field of view. So 180 millimeter telescope. Editing the images to make them look like they look like when I use my binoculars for the book. And so, I mean, that's what makes my books so popular, is that every page has a picture of what it looks like through the telescope. And so I've always gone and edited the photos to look like what it looks like through a telescope. And 1 star map per page. And so that's that. Yeah, Bob's asking, are there filters to help with visual viewing of deep sky objects through 10-inch Dobsonians? Um, yeah. So it's very subjective. So filters help, but they don't help as much as you think they might. I think that's the thing with filters. And so the best thing you can do is get to darker skies. And you're saying Bortle 2 to 3. I've also noticed like there's also a big jump from 3 to 1. Bortle 3. So Bortle is the sky darkness. And so 3 is pretty darn dark. Like your Milky Way is up there. You're seeing lots of stuff through the telescope. But like if you're in Bortle 3 and you're looking at like the North American Nebula or trying to find it, you might not see it. You're like, wow, my skies are dark. And so what you might try there to bridge that gap is a UHC filter, for example, or an O3 filter. I think UHC are a little cheaper. Um, and that might bring those into view, but you still have to do everything else, right? You still need to adapt your eyes to the dark. You still need to make sure you're not pointed to any, um, you know, any lights or anything. There's not lights shining into your telescope. Uh, and then the sky quality matters too. Like all summer, there's been haze from these forest fires, and so that's been cutting down on people's ability to see stuff as well. So again, the biggest thing you can do to improve reviews is to get darker skies. But yeah, you can experiment with the filters. I've usually been underwhelmed. I'm like, yeah, this really wasn't worth my time to screw it in. And then when you go to switch targets, like you want to take the filter off because like a light pollution filter reduces all the light. So like use a filter for nebulas like UHC, and then you go to try to view galaxies. Well, now it's harder to view galaxies. So yeah. Um, can you see M13 with Power Seeker 60? Yeah, I mean, you can see M13 with any scope. You can see M13 without a scope. You just look up as long as your skies are dark. So the interesting thing about globular clusters and nebula and galaxies is that it's kind of deceptive. Like they look better with bigger telescopes, but less so than you would think. Like again, the most important thing is the darkness of your skies, like whether you can see them or not. Yeah, they'll look a lot better in a much bigger telescope. Like the Power Seeker 60 is basically this scope, right? It's just longer. And so, uh, yeah, you can see it, assuming your skies are dark enough. Like if you're in the city, then no. Um, Larger aperture telescopes on paper shouldn't improve the view from the city, but they seem to for just different reasons. You live in Bortle 3, yeah, you'll see it. Bortle 3, you should almost be able to see it without a telescope. Again, because these objects are extended, the dominant factor here is the darkness of your skies. And then the increasing aperture increases the resolution of the object. So, but it doesn't necessarily increase its relative brightness. Subjectively, it might, but yeah. Because as you increase magnification, you're also increasing you're spreading the light out over a larger area on the back of your eye, and so yeah, sky darkness matters. Yeah, struggling to see DSOs with a 5-inch Newtonian. Any tips? Yeah, get dark. Same as I've been saying is get darker skies. That's what you got to do, and you also have to know which deep sky objects are reasonable to see. And so, is that the French one? Yeah. So, assuming you had this in English, I have the French version here. The English version's downstairs. 110 things to see with a telescope. This goes through the Messier objects. So the Messier objects are basically visible from almost anywhere. Only about a third of them you really require to go outside town to see them, and so you really want to start with that. So yeah, it's a good point. A lot of questions about binoculars today. I wonder if there's deals on binoculars. There probably are for Prime Day. This is about Prime Day. Yeah. So same thing with telescopes. Like your resolution of binoculars scales with the aperture here. So the second number. You want to get this number as high as you can. But also zoom, things look better at low So the first number is your magnification. So like a high number here and a low number here would give you the optimum. So like most people start with 10 by 50s, which is sort of a sweet spot here. That's a heck of a good price. I have these binoculars. They work great. So yeah. Anyway, the question is about lots of comments here. Yeah, Lawrence is saying he loves his cheap 10 by 50s, and they're so convenient. Yeah, I've been doing, again, I'm writing this book about binoculars, so I've been using them more and more often. Someone's saying is 160, but that, I think those numbers are backwards. Yeah, are binoculars good for stargazing? Again, you need dark skies, so your skies need to be really dark, I think, to have fun with, and it depends on with binoculars, and then it depends what you're looking at, right? You're not going to see Saturn's rings unless you've got astronomy binoculars. Do I have a pair here? No, they're downstairs. Yeah, so unless you have like tripod mounted like astronomical binoculars, you're not going to see rings of Saturn and stuff. But for exploring the Milky Way, and again, you want to know what you're looking for before you look for it, and then it's exciting to find the targets that you've looked for. But again, you want those dark skies. You want to be an hour outside any town, and then binoculars get really fun. That's the two requirements. You got to know what you're looking for before you look for it, and your skies need to be dark. Then binoculars, lots of fun. Live in a town, not much fun. Also very awkward. Yeah. And someone's saying, I'm assuming they have 60x binoculars with 100 millimeters. Those would be like those military ones you see on the side of a ship or something. Yeah. Bob says, I only get Bortle 3 once or twice a year, mostly Bortle 6 or 7. Any filter suggestions? So, UHC for nebula. And then someone mentioned O3 and they were seeing, what did they, if I scroll up here in comments. What target were they using O3 on? Again, I haven't used O3 filters in a long time. I don't even see it. You have to re-comment. Person who was talking about O3 filters. But I don't think light pollution filters would affect globular clusters very much, and they're not going to affect star clusters. But yeah, Bob, you should be able to get through most of the Messier list from Bortle 6 and 7. So, the other fun thing, I don't mean to plug my books too much. People don't like that when I plug my books on my YouTube channel. It's pretty funny. This is how I make a living. YouTube doesn't pay very much. But I've written 16 books, so that's how we make our living here. Where's the thing? I forgot what I was going to talk about. Oh, yeah. If you have the books, make sure you document your progress. We put a thing on each page where you can write down that you've seen the target. And then you can get certificates from the Astronomical League or the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Like if you fill out everything in this book, they'll send you a big certificate and you can put it on your wall. It's cool. And they get, I think you get a pin too. Definitely get a pin from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Yeah. So yeah. O3, yeah, so he says O3 versus UHC. Again, if you've got the money, you just get both and experiment. So, filters, yeah. But, I don't know. Sky quality matters too. So, like, if you're in the city and you've got a Dobsonian, let's say, you're going to see a lot when there's no moon and, you know, the stars aren't twinkling a lot. You want them to be like points of light, and then you get good views. You'll see a lot of the Messier items from the city. Okay. What is the first camera that I can use for photography? Cheap one. Yeah, so it depends what you're photographing, right? Like there's different, if it's planets and the moon and you've got a telescope, then you use an iPhone. That's your basic, or a phone, not necessarily an iPhone. And you get an iPhone mount, probably the XYZ, and you know, you take video and then you use some software to turn it into pictures. So you can just go on YouTube, and I have a few videos on how to do that. For deep sky objects, just do that. And if you're really on a budget, you would just go to B&H Photo Used Telescopes. Oh, sorry. Used Canon cameras. And sort by price. And you can usually find T3Is. Oop. High to low, low to high. Look at that. $79 for a DSLR, right? Well, it doesn't include a lens. There's your cheapest option. To answer your question, there's your option. Probably want one with a lens. Right? I mean, this camera is like 20 years old, but 10 megapixels, yeah. You can do deep sky photography with that, like Milky Way, star trails. There's your cheapest option. When you move into astrophotography and you want pictures of nebula, it's a big step up to get a designated astronomy camera. That's by far the biggest. Like, your pictures are 100 times better, and that's like a GWO, ASI. Well, right now the 2600, but the entry level one is the 294 MC, and they're usually $1,000 on the button in the United States. This must be Canadian pricing. Where's an American site? Oh, and there's a non-cool. This might be interesting. So some people are thinking that suggesting that cooling the camera is overrated. And I haven't tested this because I don't have a non-cooled camera. But here's a version of that for like $700. And basically what it doesn't do is refrigerate the sensor, which is supposed to remove noise. So here you have, here's it for $1,000. A cooling unit on the camera that chills down the sensor, and that reduces the noise and allows you to get better pictures faster. But whether that's worth the extra $400 or $300, people are now having different opinions on that. Anyway, there's your basic deep sky object camera. Wrong button. Oop! I'm hitting every wrong button on the computer here. Force quit. Get rid of InDesign there. Yeah. All right. Where's my chat? There it is. All right. Hello, I have a question on the Newtonian telescope. How can I have correct image in the eyepiece? So I always think of that, like, what are you looking at? So if you want to, so a Newtonian flips the image 90 degrees, but then you sort of look at a Newtonian from the side, so that backs it off about 45. I don't know if you could probably Google a solution for that. That's a weird question because to me it says that you're using a Newtonian telescope to look at things on Earth, like people in hotel windows or something. Yeah, kind of a weird question. Yeah. So I'm saying use an erecting eyepiece. Are there erecting eyepieces for Newtonians? Don't necessarily want to type erecting into Google to check that, but you guys can do that. Okay. So Lawrence is saying, are SV Boney's cheap cameras better than cheap DSLR or worse? Well, SV Boney, I don't know if I'm saying that right. So I think they basically just buy a whole bunch of generic stuff on Alibaba and put their SV Boney name on it. And so it depends. You'd have to look at the camera and then compare it to an equivalent brand that's probably the same camera. So I would just look at you'd have to compare it. So basically, are you saying is an astronomy camera better than a cheap DSLR? And SV Boney astronomy camera. Let's see if they've got. Yeah, so it looks like they're starting with these. Wow, is that really $200? That's interesting. Yeah, so these designated astronomy cameras will give you a much better image than a DSLR. To answer your question, these ones, a lot of it has to do with sensor size. So you can see how the sensor in this one's super tiny, and that's going to be tinier than a DSLR sensor. But the sensor in this guy is huge. So this could actually be the same as that. I don't have it open anymore. As that red camera by ZWO. It could be the same sensor and everything. So yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Oh, okay. So about the Newtonian erecting eyepiece, looking at things on Earth, just can't get used to it. Yeah. So here's what it is. So someone's saying lag. Am I laggy? I'm sorry. Should speed test myself here. Speed test. Go. I don't have. Should say in the comments how fast your internet is. Let's see how we do here. Almost 200 megabytes per second. But that doesn't really matter because I'm uploading. I'm not downloading. Let's see what the download speed is. All right, I'll answer this question. What's a good budget 2x Barlow? Yeah, a lot of telescope, like generally, telescope companies that don't sell junk, like sell good stuff only, they don't sell Barlows on purpose because a lot of the time, you know, you just get a better eyepiece, and then. But anyway, yeah. Oh, I'm uploading. Yeah, my upload's pretty slow. 10 megabytes per second. Okay. What was I going to say? About Barlows. Yeah, I mean, the thing to look for in a Barlow, just if let's say you just have a basic beginner telescope and you want to get a better image of Saturn, like that SV, Barlow, not Saturn. Typically, if you look in and the glass is big, it's all these are they're probably all using the same glass, so they'll probably all do the same job. You basically, that's kind of weird. You want to look in and just make sure that there's not a pinhole. Can't really see here. Yeah, some of the Barlows they do their job with a tiny lens, and that's what you want to avoid. Like if the Barlow comes free with a telescope, it's probably not very good. These are all amazing prices, so all of these would probably work fine. I wouldn't go 3x. It's just remember magnification is not the goal with a telescope, unless you just want Saturn to be bigger, but because magnification doesn't increase resolution. So anyway, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. So, prime day telescopes. Let's just spin through these real quick. That's a great deal. So this telescope, a lot of people have this. I get a lot of questions on it. The only issue with it, actually, there's two issues that I found. It does not come collimated out of the box, and sometimes that big mirror at the bottom, whatever reason, it's not connected very well. So what I've had to do is disconnect these screws here, these 4 screws, pull off the mirror assembly, and just look at it and make sure it seems like it's on there correct, because you may need to fix it. Anyway, I've never heard of one of these arriving collimated, so you really want to get one of those lasers and go through the collimation process. The other issue is that it's only f4, and the focal length I think is 500, which is actually pretty low if you want this for planets and stuff as a beginner. So in that case, you want a nice higher quality eyepiece. Oh yeah, and these eyepieces it comes with are terrible. So it helps to upgrade those. My latest big video on YouTube was an eyepiece video. And so like spending $200 or $150 on a nice eyepiece would make a massive difference with this telescope. But aside from that, you've got a lot of aperture. Star Sense is amazing. You've got your slow motion controls, red dot finder. It's a really great, a lot of fun telescope. Check comments. Um, yeah. So remember, TD, the ones you really want to avoid that with LT, we have those 5 steps of what determines a basic telescope, like what are the minimum requirements. Those LT telescopes fail every test. And the LT 120, 127, still, um, just like an absolutely abysmal telescope. Like, you'd probably use that and be like, that's it. I'm out of this hobby forever. Stargazing is stupid. Like, that's how bad those scopes are. I wish they wouldn't have put them on the market. That 100 or 1000 millimeter focal length is basically a scam. So, what's your favorite planet? Earth. Um, yeah. I'm fascinated by Callisto, Jupiter's moon. So, uh, did a big project on Callisto's moon because the moons have induced magnetic fields as they're moving through Jupiter's magnetic field. And if we look at the actual flux of harmful particles hitting the surface in certain atmospheres, it's actually really, really low. So you've got this place on Jupiter where if you can get to it, it's not all that radioactive. And so Jupiter's magnetic field seems to deflect cosmic rays. It deflects solar energetic particles from the sun. And Callisto is tidally locked to Jupiter. So it always faces Jupiter. It's got a 16-day day. This goes around. And but yeah, there's places on Callisto's surface where you could have a base and it would actually be relatively safe for humans. Anyway, I thought that's why I think Callisto is pretty awesome, because it's far out there. You have a great view of Jupiter. Anyway, thinking about buying a Canon 1100D and also use it for photography of other things. So yeah, those cameras are great. I don't know if the primary purpose is to attach it to a telescope, then no, just get an astronomy camera or get both. Get a lower budget DSLR and that basic astronomy camera. But yeah, so I mean, for just pointing up at the sky, I forget what price range, 1100D. Canon 1100D. What price range is that in? Okay, so $1,000. Or relatively cheap pre-owned. Interesting. Yeah, no, they'd be great. Great for astrophotography of wide field. So that's when you're doing like 30-second exposures and taking pictures of the Milky Way and stuff. Okay. RLB says, I placed a bid on the cheapest version just to be able to use smartphone holder and the software and ordered a DX6 because you can't go wrong with a C6. Yeah. So the C6, because that's just this. That's like a 1-inch bigger version of this. Now, you say only 1 inch is not true. Like that 1 inch might be doubling the light collection power of this. And then your resolution is going up by a sixth. So, yeah, DX6 is a lot of fun, mainly for taking pictures of like Saturn and stuff, which I actually did this morning with the 8-inch version. Now Saturn's pretty low. Let me see if I can show you this picture that I took this morning. This morning? This depends how early I was up. Yeah, so there's this morning's picture of Saturn. Anyway. Alright. Is there a nice way to attach a StarSense Explorer cradle to any other telescope? Yeah, I have a whole video on that. And yeah, so you can pull like if you buy, I bought my LT version, which I told you not to buy. Anyway, I bought one to like test it out. It was so bad. Anyway, I pulled off StarSense and I just screwed it to a Dobsonian. And yeah, you can 3D print an adapter for it if you want. I 3D print stuff all the time now. How many telescopes do you have? It's It's a complicated question because, yeah, complicated question because the mount, I buy mounts and telescopes separately, and I also send a lot of telescopes back because I borrow them. So in the house slash garage right now, probably just about 15 telescopes. But yeah. Dave's astrophotography. Dave, what is the longest focal length you have successfully tried to image at? Well, at school I've imaged at 4,000. But that's because we have a plane wave CDK. And I've used a Barlow on it, so 8,000. And I've taken a picture of Saturn. So that's the Burke Gaff Observatory. So this was my work telescope. There's Tiffany. She's been in some videos. There's Vincent. Grad students. Yeah. Rob Thacker. This was our telescope. And so this is 3,900 millimeter focal length, but I put a Barlow on it to achieve focus one day. So, yeah, 8,000. But this morning I was doing 1,800, and it was still kind of painful. All right, where's OBS? Yeah, but I don't know. I say this morning. It's been our baby's been getting up in the middle of the night, and sometimes I can't go back to sleep, so I'll just go out and do imaging. But yeah, so my nights are really weird right now. Someone's saying Amazon offers DX6 40% off, like new condition. You bought one of those? Awesome. Telescopes generally do not get old. They last like forever. Okay. Best eyepieces for 10-inch stop viewing DSOs. So it's interesting with this 1.25 versus 2-inch eyepieces, because I love the 2-inch eyepieces with the Dobsonian. I have this Meade 5000 series that just knocks my socks off, and I only bought it for like $200, or sorry, like $120 actually. But then I got all these Hyperion eyepieces from All Star Telescope, which double. They can do either 2-inch or 1.25, and they have the big. I wish I had one up here. Do I? No. They have the like big opening for your eye, and it fits into a 1.25 inch. You know, you could put it in this telescope, right? And I was just super impressed, and they're low cost. You know, they say a telescope should cost as much as your eyepiece. So if your telescope's $1,000, then you can get $1,000. They say that. But anyway, these eyepieces were just fantastic, and they're just these Beta Hyperion eyepieces. And I tried them in maybe five or six different telescopes, and yeah, they're about $200 Canadian, which is about $150 US. They also double as two eyepieces, so a lot of them have a Barlow inside, and so they have a chart. And if you take off the adapter here, then this is actually like a 30 millimeter eyepiece with a Barlow. And so there's a chart that you can download that has the conversion. So every eyepiece is two eyepieces. So if you have a Dobsonian with that accepts these 2-inch ones, then you know it's cool because you get two eyepieces for the price of one. Yeah, so these are my favorite eyepiece recently, besides obviously Telview, which are about triple the cost for the same optics there, you know, like one of these guys. So anyway, these are sort of like the, you know, premium. They're like the BMWs of the telescope world, whereas the Hyperions are like your Honda Civics, I guess. All right. Is this Lestron Power Seeker 114 EQ good? You guys should go on YouTube and Ed Ting, definitely follow Ed Ting, worst telescope. There it is. There's your 127.
Just sit back.
Yeah, so basically at the beginning of the video, he says, the 127 and the 114 are basically the same scope. And And so he basically says, post on cloudy nights that you're interested in the 114 EQ or the 127 EQ, and watch the hate roll in, because it's literally the worst telescope ever made. Actually, it's impressive how bad it is. Yeah, don't buy a power seeker because Ed Ting thinks it's the worst. Yeah, Ed is. I mean, you're talking someone here that's probably been using these telescopes for 60 years, and whereas I've only been at this for about 12 years here, so yeah, Ed knows his stuff. Okay. But so the difference between Ed and I is Ed usually only reviews super premium telescopes. I don't know where he even finds these things. They're like little telescopes for $4,000 a piece. Anyway, that's not what beginners are generally buying. Most people are on a budget. Okay. Yeah. What's the best season for astrophotography? Well, it depends what you're pointed at and which hemisphere you live in. So in the summer, you get the Milky Way, at least the core of it, and the Summer Triangle, which has all sorts of stuff in it. Cassiopeia and Cygnus and stuff has a bunch of nebula. The planets are on the ecliptics. That changes year to year. In the winter, everyone's photographing Orion. So, yeah, hopefully that answers that question. I have a Power Seeker 50 AZ. I mean, so the 50 is the aperture. Aperture determines resolution. So, like, Power Seeker 50 is, again, that's basically this telescope but longer, right? So the views are pretty much as bad as it gets. The resolution is just abysmal. But yeah, you can see Jupiter and you can see the bands on the planet. Is it good for planetary observations? No. Can you see planets? Yes. You can see Saturn's rings. They're gonna look super tiny. Someone's asking, why is it when I center on a planet in PIPP, but the video is more than 5 minutes long, then what PIPP will produce will be a 2-second video? That's in your settings. Gotta be. The length of the video coming out of that's planetary imaging post-processor is what he's asking about. It's a software for PC that if you take a photo of a planet or a video of a planet with your iPhone, it'll take, and it's bouncing around, it'll center that planet in the field of view and convert it to an ADI. So then you can put it into Registax and make an image out of it. That's the video coming out of PIPP should be the same length as the one going in. 5 minutes is super long though. I don't know what that's a crazy length of the video. Like, I never go longer than a minute. Okay. Looking for a portable whoa, man, I must be quiet. My microphone is way the heck over here. There we go. Probably get louder here. So this video is super spontaneous and I'm running on very little sleep. So thanks everyone for having the patience to hang out here. You're asking such great questions. Okay, I gotta find out where I was. Okay, PIPP. Yeah. Just look at a lot of settings in that software. Okay, looking for a portable refractor to use on an AZ GTI. Which would be the best ES Explore Scientific First Light? Okay, so assuming visual astronomy, yeah, the 102 refractors are wonderful. Just depends on your budget. He's asking which, yeah. Those would all be good on the AZ GTI. AZ GTI is really fun, although they've sort of replaced it. Like, people now buy the AZ GTI so that you can later go into astrophotography. Because as a mount, it sort of bridges that gap. I wonder if they sell that on Amazon. AZ GTI. But you need a wedge. So that's a really good deal there. $500 for an AZ GTI with a telescope. Lots of fun. now everyone is switching because there's a lot of things you need to do to modify the AZGTI for astrophotography. That said, I do most of my astrophotography on a modified AZGTI. But what they basically did is they built the Star Adventurer GTI, which is basically, here it is here. That looks like it's on sale too. This is, I think, the same guts as an AZGTI, but all the modification has been done for you here. So this was originally based on a Star Tracker platform, but this is actually a full mount. And it's got this, I think it's a telescope inside it, which allows you to align to the, the celestial pole. So that would be the alternative now for the AZGTI for people that are looking to ultimately someday switch to astrophotography. Okay, where was I? What dedicated astronomy camera would you recommend? Depends on your budget. If it's planets, then just one of those basic ZWO planetary imaging ones, like the, let me just go to that. And there's one for every, so these are planetary cameras here, and you get what you pay for. So bigger sensors make it easier to use because you're seeing more in the field of view. There's also pixel size. So planets are small, and so if your pixel size is small, you'll have better detail on the planet, assuming your telescope has that resolution too. But if you're doing deep sky objects, and you're a beginner, it's either the 294, and I would do in color. It's a big step up processing wise to go to black and white with the filter wheel. The 2600 MC. This I should really buy, and then Duo. This would be my next purchase if I can justify it. And that way you don't need a guide scope as well. So here's your guide camera and here's your main camera. So basically how cameras work is the telescope, if you put a piece of paper behind the telescope, in theory, if you're in a black room or something, the image of space appears effectively on that piece of paper with no eyepieces or anything, right? So you put a camera there at that focal plane and the pixels turn that image and digitize it, right? Now the picture that the telescope creates, pretend there's no camera there, is larger than the sensor. And so what they're doing here is they're adding another sensor with its own focus knob too, which is kind of cool. And that will watch the stars that are not in the frame of your regular camera. And it'll use that data, taking like 1 second exposures to keep the mount pointed at the same spot. Anyway, really cool technology, and the resolution and the image as you get from this camera would just blow your mind. Again, you need to pair it with a proper telescope, like an imaging telescope, an apo. Apo means apochromatic. That's what you need to take awesome pictures. Wow, a lot of Power Seeker questions here. How good is the Power Seeker 114? You would use it and you would never do astronomy again. It's that bad. We've covered that several times. What do you think about the Virtuoso GTI 150? Skywatcher Virtuoso GTI 150. Let me see what that is. See if it's on Amazon. Why don't I type in here? Skywatcher. Oh, yeah. So I think in terms of a fun factor, I'm not sure this would be a whole lot of fun. I think it does pass all the tests. I think the annoying thing with this compared to a StarSense scope like this, because this one's quite a bit cheaper, and they're about the same aperture, right? This is really fun. You can just fly around the sky going target to target. There's really nothing to align. I mean, the app takes just a second to align versus this guy, which you have to actually go through that whole step-by-step alignment process. If you move the telescope, it needs to be realigned, and so on. So, it's about $200 more expensive for the same aperture, approximately. Well, you have 20 more millimeters versus this, which would be a whole lot more fun. So that's my thoughts on that. All right, going through the questions here. What do you think? Yeah, Virtuoso. Why is it when I see Jupiter, it's a blur? I have StarSense 114. Well, so the 114 is the LT StarSense, and yeah, but it should be able to. So if Jupiter's blurry, it's out of focus. 114, it's a terrible telescope, but it should be able to get an okay view of Jupiter. Yeah, so it's out of focus. Start with the eyepiece with the highest focal length. I think the StarSense 114 comes with a 20 millimeter. Jarkey says, FYI, you were actually coming in great. Oh, cool. Someone else, the lag was on their end. Power Seeker, yeah, no. A good article on Astronomy Magazine about quasars. Have you viewed or photographed the quasar? No, I haven't. I saw someone else just did that. How about Astromaster 130 EQ? So, not a fun telescope. A lot of people buy it. It looks pretty. But that's one of the ones on the EQ mount. It's like the 130. This is the same as the 130. It's just a little smaller. Massively over-engineered. So the funny thing about Amazon and oops, man, I'm not on the ball today. EQ. Yeah. Is that the reviews are like inverse. So you have a telescope like that would be not fun at all, and like the reviews are almost perfect. Like we went over this one before, and if we go to Telescope Watch 130 EQ, like people just like it's like do not buy, don't do it, infuriating, right? Like it's massively over-engineered, lots to put together, and then a painful alignment process. Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, my point is that the Amazon reviews are often the reverse. Like, here's a telescope that's far better than that telescope, but only 4 stars. Whereas you go up to a telescope that is definitely not recommended, and it's almost 5 stars. And I think people give it 5 stars, assuming those reviews are legitimate, just because it arrived, not broken. Or they look at the moon. Like, they're like, yeah, I looked at the moon and I saw the moon, 5 stars, right? And that's actually a terrible picture of the moon. Like, people are easily impressed, especially new astronomers when they're basing the telescope off their view of the moon. Any telescope can see the moon, right? So that might be why those reviews are so funky. Okay. I hope I will get this year some good telescope. When I was a kid, I bought this telescope. Yeah. I mean, the best telescope is the one that gets used. So, yeah. Scrooge McDuck says, I had a Power Seeker 117 EQ. Drove me out of astronomy for 4 years. Yeah, I'm wondering if no, it was probably a Bushnell. When I was a kid, I had a telescope. Because I didn't discover astronomy until I was 27 years old. And because my dad had a telescope that was probably the same as a Power Seeker. And nothing ever impressed me that I saw through it. But I also didn't have any resources. Like, I didn't have... Like, if I had 50 things to see with a telescope, which is just, like, the 10 main objects to see each season, then I would have known what to point it at. But there were no resources. This is back in, like, 1999, right? And so then I went and got a business degree, which was good because then I learned some marketing and stuff, which helped later on once I finally discovered astronomy. But yeah, then it's been really difficult for me to sort of get my life in order again after deciding to change careers. So I left corporate finance in 2016, after about 7 years of doing amateur astronomy and just falling in love with space, after I finally got a telescope that could see things and that really ignited my soul for space. But it's been almost 8 years now since I left corporate America, and I'm still trying to, reestablish a new career in the space industry that was motivated by finally getting a good telescope. Yeah, a lot. Himley is saying here in Indonesia, telescope shops are very rare, almost non-existent. I mean, we don't really have telescopes shops here either. And we do have, a camera store that sells stuff, but they have like a 20% markup over the internet. It's as if they just bought the telescopes online and put it in the store. And so you really have to buy things online, and you probably just need to accept that you're going to have to pay those import costs. So for Indonesia, you might have Amazon that carries hopefully some not terrible scopes, but B&H Photo also ships worldwide. You just sort of sometimes have to pay their customs fees. Oh, that's funny. Their used telescope is more expensive than the Amazon Prime deal. Yeah. There's a good deal. This Evolution mount, I've always wanted one of these. Really cool. And you can modify this for astrophotography too. But this is nice because you've got the internal lithium ion battery and you control it with an iPad. So very cool. All right. Let's get through all these comments. Thanks for the Q&A. Gotta go. Different time zone. Cheers from the Netherlands. Yeah, it's probably dinner time. Okay. Yeah. So for those of you in, non-Western countries, just, yeah, I feel your pain. I would start with, B&H Photo used and see if they can get a telescope to you at a reasonable price. But again, you want to know, and not again, but I guess for the first time, you want to know what telescope you want before you go looking for it. Like if you want a Dobsonian, which is the best bang for your buck, you gotta sort of know ahead of time. Don't just find a telescope that looks like it's a good price and buy it. Okay. Where did the moon go? I took a great picture of the moon this morning. It's in its crescent phase, so we're almost near new moon. That's why we're having an eclipse this Saturday. Don't look at the sun unless you have welder's glass or eclipse glasses on. But yeah, so I think for the Americas, everyone in the Americas should see a partial eclipse. And then it'll be a ring of fire eclipse for some proportion of the United States. And that's where, because the moon's orbit is elliptical, right? So sometimes it doesn't fully cover the sun. Even when it's directly in front of the sun, you see a ring of the sun around it. So it's called an annular eclipse. Next April 4th, the moon will be closer to us. It'll fully cover the sun. You'll get a total solar eclipse that's basically runs from Texas to Prince Edward Island, maybe some Newfoundland. Okay. Yeah, eyepieces that are good for an 8-inch Dob Star Sense. Again, depends on your budget. I've been blown away by the Baader Hyperion eyepieces, so let's go back to those. Baader Hyperion, yeah, for about $150 US each. Wow, that's overpriced. Where's Baader Hyperion? Yeah, these guys. These are Canadian prices. So in US, that'd be about $150. These have just been rocking my world recently. So I've got a lot of eyepieces. But I think these are my new, short of going to Teleview, I think that's what I would use. And I would get the 24 millimeter version to start, and then the 10 millimeter version for planets. So to get those two eyepieces would be about, $300 for the both of them. But I'm trying to figure, it's Aegea Astro. It's the new American shop now that took over OPT. Let's see if they have them. millimeter Hyperion. That's 36. Let's see how much their 24 millimeter is. I think it's 25 millimeter. Yeah, 169. This was just a really fantastic eyepiece. And if you look at my, you go to my YouTube channel here. I'm watching my Starship updates. Okay, let's see. Yeah, this Get Better Views video, we actually built a, yeah, here's an example. We built an eyepiece simulator and showed it in all 3 different telescopes. You should definitely watch that video. Yeah, so here's like the image through that eyepiece. Moving over to the 24 millimeter Hyperion, we can see that this is a wonderful. You can see I watch videos at multi-speed. It's just really a really crisp image. This is some background reflection because, you know, I'm just using an iPhone here. But, yeah. And I built my own iPhone adapters for these eyepieces, which are pretty cool. So if any of you guys subscribe to me on Patreon, that's where I post all the STL files. So you can 3D print sort of. If you see me 3D printing in a video, I'll throw the files up there on Patreon. Yeah. Oh yeah, where did the moon go? It's almost new moon. So the moon will be back in about a week and a half. So right now it's in waning crescent. Then it'll go to new where it's near the sun. And then in about a week after that, it'll be in the crescent phase. And you'll, yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Fredericksburg, Texas. Can't wait to see the eclipse. Probably have better luck than us because we might have weather. Chandler, first telescope adult yesterday ordered the 130 DX you show. Good choice. Yeah, amazing choice. Just make sure you buy your laser collimator. It will need collimation out of the box. So got lots of videos on how to use the laser collimator. Laser collimator. Anyone will do. I have this one. Yeah, learn how to use it and just make sure those mirrors are nice and aligned. You also might want a nice eyepiece to go along with that scope. Keep hearing kids' voices. Must be an open window somewhere here. My kid should be in school. Anyway. TJ Geometry says, StarSense DX, you convinced me. Yeah. So, let's see here. Let's see what other ones they have in that series. So the advantage of, oh, it looks like this one's not on sale. So you could go with the 102, which is the exact same mount, and you're missing an inch of aperture, but these refractors are just super low maintenance, and they're nice. You don't need to collimate them or anything. So that's another option. I've been really impressed with those ones. Oh, it is on sale, $319. So your resolution is going to be a little higher in this one, but your reliability is a little higher with the 102. And then there's the DX5. Of course, that's about double the price. Too bad that one's not on sale. Yeah. They also have the Dobsonian. Now, yeah, we did a really fun video. I don't know if anyone's seen this one. It didn't perform as well as we thought it should. But if we go to my channel here, we raced that telescope. I guess it's got 10,000 views. That's not bad. So we raced the StarSense Dobsonian against the Berkowski Observatory, and it was so much fun. It's just so fast to find targets with StarSense, especially with a Dobsonian. And this was from the city, and like we were still able to see, all sorts of stuff. And we compared Tiffany's images with the big scope to what I could see with my eyes. So yeah, I could see a little bit of the tail and everything.
Oh, that's great. I was looking at it through the VGO telescope earlier. I think it was a little bit too low. I couldn't really see very much. John, I couldn't get a photo.
Anyway, really fun video. You guys should check it out. All right. Dave's Astrophotography says Telescope Express website in Germany actually shows you the shipping cost to select a country. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the Bresser brand in Germany is the same telescopes as Explore Scientific in the United States. And so that has been a website that I go to a lot when people ask me questions from the UK or EU. And then you can sort of line up the telescope with, you can actually, actually put in the minimum requirements here. 102 and say 600. And then put in the type of mount. As I say, no EQ. Oh, of course it has these rod and yoke mounts. But now you can actually get telescopes that meet the requirements. Some of these you might have to modify a little bit. I had this telescope before and absolutely loved it. The AR102. And when I had it, it came with a 2-inch diagonal, which is really cool. But anyway, so yeah, Bresser is pretty good. And the prices seem to be really good too. All right, these questions are great. I don't need to think about coming up with content if you guys are. Yeah, it's Bresser. Am I not saying that right? Anyway, is Dwarf 2 a good buy? So the Dwarf telescopes, do they sell those on Amazon? They're fun, but remember, resolution is driven by your aperture, right? So you've only got a 20 millimeter aperture there, I think. So you're going to get really wide field views. And you're not going to be able to do planets. So your resolution just won't be that high. I also wonder, it probably doesn't, but it might use AI, because you're going to get like a pixelated image, and it might be using some sort of AI to smooth it out. I don't know. They're fun though. Like for Andromeda shots, look pretty good. You're not going to impress any astronomers with the images, but yeah, like that image is really quite poor, right? The stars are all bloated. It's noisy. There's not a lot of detail in the galaxy. It's just basically a function of the aperture on that lens is just so small. So, but they're fairly fun and they're fairly easy to use. My friend David has used one at Stargaze Nova Scotia. Yeah, speaking of Stargaze Nova Scotia, I can give you guys an update for anyone that's watching. I don't know if we're posting much here. So Stargaze Nova Scotia is basically the set we bought for the Learn to Stargaze YouTube channel. And we went a little overboard. So originally I was just going to buy like an acre of land in the middle of nowhere. And then we ended up finding this 26-acre lot on a lake, on Big Lake here, which was a little bit more expensive than we had budgeted for. But then we're like, well, what if we just had an observatory that was open to the public and maybe put cabins there and everything? So we just sort of went all out. And the issue was there was like no access whatsoever. There was just like the highway and then a giant cliff. And so we found like a break in the walls, and then we ended up, well, we need a lane, and we ended up going overboard on that as well, and put in this this whole basically road and parking lot so that we could access it. And this is sort of why we started the Patreon too, is to hypothetically help fund this Stargaze Nova Scotia project. And we're in Bortle 3 skies. They're right at Bortle 4. I think that's just because you can see a little bit of the light dome from Halifax, but the Atlantic Ocean is to our south, and so there's nothing there, and there's enough roll in the hills to take out a lot of that fog that would otherwise, hit us from being close to the ocean. Anyway, so the update on Stargaze Nova Scotia is we're working on getting power there, and I'm working on designs for an observatory. So just these are very poor, but I don't know if we've got, yeah. So the power company was out there, and so they're like, hey, you need a shed, and so I'm like, well, I might as well build an observatory, because they wanted a shed to connect. If they're going to bring out power lines, so like you might as well have a building, like a shed. And so yeah, so I've just been working on designs for that. I was going to see if I could show you the leading design here. Do I have it here? There's the inside. Yeah. So basically, hopefully we can have an architect make it look even better. But this is actually pretty small. So it's just basically a basic shed. 15 feet by 15 feet. Hopefully stay below the footprint in which you need a permit. Might need a permit anyway, for where we are. The challenge though here is getting a concrete pier. So I need to call an engineer to come and design this pier. But the engineer needs an architect. So now I need to hire an architect. So that's where our Patreon dollars are going right now. At least they're going towards it anyway. I think we're up to $80 a month in Patreon. Which if you think about it, will fund about, $10,000 or something of a loan payment, interest only. Maybe not at today's interest rates, but that's how I'll justify it. So that's the goal where we want to put in that spot there. Okay. All right. I'm sure a bunch more questions have trickled in. Amazon back up here. Put that up there so I can see the comments. Okay. What do you think about Bresser 6-inch planetary Dobsonians? I loved my 6-inch Dobsonian, and they all basically use the same mirror. They're all the same focal lengths. We could check to see if it has a finder scope or not. Let me wait. Oh, come on. Bresser, go. We bragged about my internet speed, and now it's just abysmal. Maybe that's the server on the UK side of things. But yeah, those Dobsonians are really great. Super easy to use. Dobsonian 6. There's the 8. Oh, this is the tabletop one. Yeah. Okay, so it depends if you're the tabletop or the stand-up one. Not a huge fan of tabletops, and so you might have a shorter focal length on this one than the one that I had. You're still going to get great views, and it still passes all the tests, like great beginner telescope, red dot finder. You can put a 2-inch eyepiece in there, nice focuser. Comes with a solar filter. That's kind of cool. It's Newtonian, so you're not going to have chromatic aberration. It's a really good price. Hopefully that answers that question. What telescope will you install in the observatory? So I'll probably put one of the ones I have right now in. So I've got it just for cost reasons. And then as it grows as a company, we'll go bigger. So I've got an EQ6R Pro mount that I'll probably use. And then I'll probably just use my Explore Scientific CF102. Yeah, so when I bought this, it was only $1,000. So there's some serious inflation. So I'll probably just mount this scope with a camera on that big honkin' mount. But eventually we'll get a big new SCT up there. Ideally like a C14 or something. Maybe even a C16. I don't know. It depends how this YouTube channel goes. Hard to get subscribers on YouTube. So subscribers, that's why everyone says, please subscribe. That drives your ability to get sponsors. And it also helps get new views because people see they get the notifications and things. And more views is more ad dollars. Ad dollars are just not very much. So, I've made 100 and some videos at this point, and I've definitely spent more money making videos than I've made in ad revenues. So, yeah, like it works out for my channel has like 24,000 subscribers. That works out to about $300 a month in revenue. So there's some YouTube statistics for you. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Just wondering if you're not tired of answering these questions. I mean, technically, what I'm supposed to be doing today. I'll show you what I'm supposed to be doing. I can log into my homework here. Let's see what my homework is for the day. You guys probably don't know. I'm a grad school student. And I'm in my 5th course here at Johns Hopkins. So what I'm supposed to be doing today, which I'm a little bit procrastinating on because it's old news for me, because I just took a course on this, is I need to watch another 90-minute lecture on space weather. And I don't want to do that. I just took a whole course on space weather, and it's pretty boring. No, space weather is very exciting, but the lecture, if it's all, none of it's new information, it's kind of dry. So I'd much rather be talking to you guys, answering questions, than watching this lecture. So that's what I have to do as soon as I'm done here, and then do this assignment. If any of you guys are experts on space weather, let me know. So I need to write a white paper on space weather and do this mission design for a fictional mission, and talk about what we should do. Now, this is literally something I already just did last semester, where we did a fictional based on Jupiter's moon Callisto, and we calculated all the flux from the incoming radiation. Anyway, yeah, you can help me in the chat. TD Geometry, help me with my space weather homework. What are some ideas for a space mission that I could learn to protect? So I already did Callisto, and pretty much everyone's probably doing low Earth orbit. If we look at the orbital regimes, you've got the sort of sub 1,000-kilometer orbits, which are affected by, it's called the auroral region in space weather. And so that's where you're affected by the ionosphere. So the ionosphere will disrupt your radio signals, or it could, if it's highly energetic, the atmosphere gets actually thicker during high solar activity, and it can lower the orbits of your satellites and make you lose track of them. So not cool. And then above that, you have your lower radiation belt. And then there's a spot in medium Earth orbit where sort of GPS is. So there's that environment at the bottom of the upper radiation belt. And then there's geostationary orbit, where you're above the radiation belts and you're getting more direct solar radiation in terms of solar energetic particles from the sun. So yeah, I guess my task is to pick some fictional space mission and drop a mission plan for it. Okay. Yeah. Hilmi says I also have homework for the day. Yeah, too lazy to do it. Story of my life. The challenging thing for me is because I have 3 kids, my time is quite constrained. So I have to do it between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Otherwise, nighttime is sort of a write-off. Zoom eyepieces any good? Zoom eyepieces are a lot of fun. The quality of the optics, I get a lot of fun though. Like if you look at the moon, or especially if you're stargazing with other people and they say zoom in, and you're like, sweet, and you zoom in. It's also good for finding targets, because you zoom out to find targets, like, I don't know, double star like Iberio, and then you zoom in by twisting it and refocus. Yeah, lots of fun. TD says, I will help by believing in you. Yeah. It's interesting because there's these courses that are really difficult, but at least the solutions are objective. So like the hardest courses in the program, I ended up getting A+ in, which is at Johns Hopkins requires a 98% and above. So I was able to get 98%, but a lot of that is because it's mathematics and whatever. But these courses that are like mission design, where it's like come up with a budget and justify your answer, those ones, I always get killed on those because they're like, well, you know, you probably could have funded another instrument on your spacecraft, -5 points. And then, well, now you got a 95, now you can't get an A+ anymore in the course. So, yeah. Space Chaser. I recognize that name, I think. Just got a Celestron Nexstar 8SE. Yeah. So hopefully you watch my, I think I've got 2 videos on that telescope. One we did with Dave Chapman where we go through the alignment. It's cool. Although the advice for that is to do a 2-star align and not an all-star align. A lot of people have been commenting on the video that they've been having trouble with the all-sky align, which is where you just pick 2 targets and you don't necessarily know what they are, and it'll figure out what they are and do your alignment. Kind of painful. If you know what the stars are ahead of time, much more likely to have success. But yeah, that Celestron Nexstar 8SE is just the classic. Like, if you can afford it, it's probably the optimal beginner telescope for visual astronomy. Yeah. Wow, I think we're through these questions. Have we almost been on for 2 hours? 1 hour and 30 minutes. Okay, I guess it took me 30 minutes to figure out OBS and to get this green screen thing working, which is not perfect because I look really, really pale in this, which is not actually the case. Okay, not that pale. Anyway, yeah. Have I even gone through the telescopes that I opened up here? Yeah. 130. Oh, here's this one. Like, don't do it. This is, again, an example of a telescope that fails every test. You know, it can't point up. The finder's horrible. The aperture's too small. It's got this 45-degree diagonal. Like, this is great if you're working at a rifle range and you need to look at targets or something. That's about all it's good for. Even bird watching is a pain. Okay. There's the EQ again. Yeah. That's a really good deal. $650 for an 8-inch Dobsonian. We almost thought those days were over, but hopefully there's a little deflation going on as the telescope companies are realizing that if they jack the price up too much, no one's going to buy it. And so now they have hopefully extra inventory. They can cut the prices. But there's another example of one of the best telescopes on Amazon being marked down. Like, these telescopes are absolutely fantastic. Now, you want to replace that finder scope, probably. It looks like a pretty good finder scope. But, yeah, be much easier with a Telrad. We didn't even talk about Telrads yet. They sell Telrads. Telrad holders. Well, I guess these have sort of replaced Telrads. Star Pointer Pro, which is nice because it fits into the Celestron ports. These reflex sights, I've never seen this one. It looks cool though. So it's nice to have the bullseye. So this one projects a bullseye, and the bullseye is a certain field of view. Like, it's equivalent to like 25 times magnification. But if you look at anything in like the 50 things to see with the book, we put Telrad rings on every page. Yeah, point out, yeah. So on every map, and that allows you to get a sense for how far away the target is from a nearby object, right? And so it really helps to have those rings on your finder there. Wow, someone is just spamming. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do any telescope with a 76 millimeter aperture. That's not going to happen. Because again, that is too small. Like, it doesn't meet the basic requirements. If your telescope aperture is too small, then you're not going to get good views of stuff, right? And it's not going to bring in enough light to, yeah. Anyway, is that all the same comment, just 10 times? How do you do planetary observations on a tight budget? It depends how tight your budget is. So the best telescopes for planetary, I guess, and it depends what like, you can see planets in any telescope. The resolution is determined by the aperture. right? These and then your magnification, which if you're looking at Saturn, yeah, you want high magnification. You basically don't want magnification for anything else but Saturn, because most things look better with less magnification. But yeah, so that's why if you're just looking at Saturn, that's why you have those really long focal length telescopes. But yeah. I have the Celestron 130 EQ and I can't level the tripod. Yeah, we've talked about that quite a bit. I mean, I feel like to level a tripod, you just extend the legs all the way. The other thing about an EQ mount, I don't think the level tripod matters as much because you can just, it's fixed by, if the telescope, because it's already inclined to your latitude, and then adjust it so that axis, if the axis is pointed at the North Star, at the celestial pole, then it doesn't really matter if your mount's level, because it matters that the axis is pointed at the right place. So anyway, getting spammed by office hours. I don't think I have office hours right now, but never know. Anyway, again, school, procrastination. All right. Someone's asking about the SV Bony 105. Yeah, so 105 is a good aperture. I'm not sure what that scope is. Remember, almost all these scopes all these manufacturers buy their lenses at the same place. Wait, are you sure it's 105 and not 103 or 102? So 102 is an extremely popular size. But anyway, I don't know. Lawrence says, I'm a beginner, but I'm happy with my 130 millimeter wide, 900 millimeter long Skywatcher refractor. EQ mounts take a lot of getting used to. Yeah, I mean, if you're proficient in EQ mounts, then yeah, they're cool. You can turn that one knob and keep your target in view. Oh, someone says SV Bony 105 is a camera. I don't know. Celestron Astromaster a good telescope? No Astromasters are good telescopes, as a general rule. Like, you could see Saturn with them and you could see the moon with them, but you can see the Saturn and the moon in any telescope. The challenge with those telescopes is they generally fail all 5 of those tests. Those beginner telescope minimum requirements, and that's the bare minimum. Like, those Astromasters, almost all of them fail each test. They fail all the tests, which is actually impressive. Like the manufacturers are designing them, with telescope manufacturing, the marketing department designs the telescope generally, because then they'll sell a whole bunch. So the marketing department will say, hey, let's go to one of those. Yeah. They're like, let's make a telescope with lots of gears and seem like it has a lot of features, right? So, and then they'll also make the focal length really long and say, oh, people like high magnification on the box. And then they'll include a really terrible low focal length eyepiece that will increase the magnification. Again, so that they can make a better claim for higher magnification on the box, which is the least important quality of a telescope. And, so again, like, all this extra bells and whistles is not driven by a telescope designer. It's driven by the marketing department. I don't know how I got on that tangent. Anyway. Yeah. So cheaper from Germany than Slovenia. Yeah. Basic step to do astrophotography. So there's 3 main different types of astrophotography. It's a fun question. And I'm not an astrophotography channel, although it might sort of morph into one because I'm getting so many questions. The main type of astrophotography is just a DSLR on a tripod. And you take 25-second exposures at high ISO. So that's called wide field astrophotography. The second type of astrophotography is planetary astrophotography. And mainly that's just done with a high focal length telescope and an iPhone. So you're taking pictures of Saturn or the moon. So that's type 2. Type 3 is deep sky astrophotography. And that's where you're using a premium. You typically start out with a premium. This is just that crappy one that you wouldn't buy, but a premium refractor. Usually has APO in the name, and something like this will cost around $1,000. And then you use, typically these days you're not using DSLRs anymore because the astronomy cameras have come down in price. So you'll use an astronomy camera, typically a cooled one, and you'll have it on a German equatorial mount. And that's how you get nebulas and galaxies. So really a budget galaxy, or maybe not even galaxies, but a budget telescope for taking pictures of nebula, you can almost do it for around $3,000 now, which would be the lowest cost to get a good picture of a nebula. About $3,000 would be your entry-level budget. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. I can go into more detail. I mean, people love astrophotography, but the least Bortle scale for seeing Milky Way, capturing it. You can technically capture the Milky Way from the city. You just need to manage your exposure settings to get a signal to noise ratio that works. So, yeah. So 16-second exposures for the Milky Way. Yeah, I mean, you have to have dark skies, because if you're taking the 16-second exposure from the city, it's just going to appear white on your camera sensor. If you're in Bortle 3 and it's dark, then 16-second exposure with a high ISO, it'll totally bring in the Milky Way. Yeah. I think to see the Milky Way is about Bortle 4, I think, with your eye. Cameras can see it a little bit later. What's Planet X? I don't know. Okay. 5 to 6 Bortle scale. Yeah, I'm getting hungry. You guys are taxing my brain. My brain wants food. All right. Yeah, maybe we can unlearn to stargaze here. Do I have my current astronomy rig here? Probably don't. Oh, there's my old. That's how I first started in astrophotography. So I had an AVX mount, which I got used for $400. And here I finally got the astronomy camera. You can see how far back it needs to be to get focus. We've got a field flattener here. So typically you need a field flattener to place the image on the CCD. Otherwise, the stars will be in focus in the center and then not in center on the outside. And then you have your guider. Now that duo camera, it puts all of this inside the main camera. So you don't need one of these anymore, which is also nice because then you can use a lighter mount with a bigger telescope, which is something I might explore in a month or so here. And then most people these days that aren't taking things too seriously are using an ASI Air. And this is so you don't need a computer to capture your images, and it also does a file management for you. So typically you're stacking image on top of image on top of image. And what the ASI Air does, it allows you to only keep track of the current image, and it can delete all those other images. And so you can do your calibration frames too, and it will do those ahead of time. So that means telling the camera what a blank white field would look like, so that it can subtract out any dust bunnies in the image or any weird shape from, like, you're looking down a toilet paper tube is like a telescope, and you get an image that's not flat. Anyway, and then your biases to take out the noise that's innate to the camera, and then your darks, which take out noise from like infrared photons, anyway, which come from like the heat from the sensor, that sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway, so very basic setup. There's a dew filter on, or a dew shield, so this heats up the lens so that it doesn't get dew on it. Yeah, but these days I've been using the AZ GTI, which is modified. And so AZ GTI is usually an AZ mount. This I'm doing my flats here, so I just bought a $20 sketch pad, one of those LED sketch pads, and that you can use to tell the telescope what a flat white looks like. It actually pulled I think this is the counterweight from a power seeker. So at least I put that to good use. But yeah, everything rides on top of the AZ GTI. And so this mount was about $400 at the time. So actually this is pretty budget. I mean, this is still probably a little bit over $3,000 worth of gear, but it's still a very budget way to do it. Shadow Gamer says, looks like a rural transit. Okay. Dew shield on a Newtonian? I don't know, probably not. So a lot of bigger Newtonians have a fan at the back, and that would sort of double as a dew shield too, but I don't know. It'd have to be pretty dewy to get. You might put a dew shield. Dew shield is where you extend the yeah, no, I can't see a purpose to the dew shield. I thought you were talking dew heaters. Yeah. So, Shadow Gamer, at least you have better telescope than me. It's funny though, because a lot of all the astronomy YouTubers, I probably have the least fancy telescopes of all of them. I don't have, besides that carbon fiber one that I paid $1,000 for, I really don't have any super premium telescopes, and that's partially because of the audience that I think watches this channel. In terms of, like, I'm not taking astrophotographers who want to go from good to great. I'm taking people who are new to the hobby, or people who are transitioning into astrophotography, or people who are doing things on a budget but not a DIY budget. Like, what's the minimum setup that I can get this? And I think what's challenging for me, at least in the comments, is people are like, they'll set a budget and they'll set what they want to accomplish. But they're like, I want nebula photos and I don't want to spend over $700. Well, it doesn't work that way. Like, the minimum setup that I can create where I can reliably get good photos of nebula is $3,000. And we can go up from there, right? But yeah, so I get a lot of these questions. Any good telescope mirror under $100? I assume you mean a telescope under $100. Yeah, so that would be this one. This is the minimum telescope that meets those 5 requirements, right? So this is basically the Orion Star Blast, I think. Here it's Zummel Z100. That's and it's about $120, I think. If we just go to, I think it's the Orion Star Blast. Yeah. Star Blast 100. Anyway, there's one of them here, and it's $129. Oh, Skyscanner, not Star Blast. Like, that's as low as it gets and still meeting the requirements. Yeah, $129. That's, that's a good price. But there's your bare minimum for a good telescope. What camera do you recommend for EAA? So EAA is electronically assisted observing. So again, depends what you're looking at. Depends what telescope you have. If it's nebula, then the 294 MC Pro, right? Which is this one, this red one. So like this would be an EAA. These are both EAA setup. So I've used both of these for EAA. So yeah, that 294 MC Pro is your base, basically your base model cooled astrophotography camera for nebula and stuff. If it's planets, you would get a smaller one. So yeah, EAA is a lot of fun. Someone says, how about a 70? The two lines mean inches. A 70-inch telescope. I'll show you a 70-inch telescope. No, those aren't. Yeah, that'd be like that. That's a 70-inch.
Hey everyone,
right
welcome.
So yeah, that'd be great. I mean, you'd have a lot of fun with that. Yeah. So cool. Yeah, it means 70. Probably means 70 millimeters. I'm gonna turn off that. There we go. I don't need to see his face. Yeah, so 70 millimeters. You're only gonna see the moon and planets. Now, from really dark skies, yeah, you could see some deep sky objects, but the issue is that if you're looking at something like the Orion Nebula or M13, you're not going to be able to resolve individual stars because your resolution is too low. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, lots of comments there. Did I miss any? I'm going to have to break soon for lunch. Let's see how many people are on here. Go back to my channel. Again, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We're down to 20 people watching. That's still pretty good. Imagine 20 people, or, you know, because I think we're up to 36 in the same place at the same time. Like, that's cool. It's good to hang out with, like, 20 people. Let's see what other windows. Yeah, there's your dwarf. You can start closing these. Yeah, it's still funny, like, if you type in telescope into Amazon, I guess it's probably learning from my search history, but like how many of these would function? How many of these would make you not want to leave the hobby, would keep you interested? And like we can go down that list, like this one, no, literally like the worst telescope. That's, you're not, it's sort of beginner astrophotography, but you're not going to impress anyone. This telescope's not designed for looking at space at all. These are Barlows that wouldn't even work with that. Like, these are so bad, they're basically scams at this point. That one, that one, that one. I don't know if those are probably, yeah, those are sponsored, so we'll ignore those for a second. Like, nope, scam. This is kind of weird. This is a bundle, so someone's buying it and then reselling it. You know, the DX102, that's a great scope. Amazon has it for $312 right now, I think. You know, this scope, nope, horrible. This one, horrible. That one, horrible. Horrible. This company actually reached out to me and said, hey, can we send you this? And I was like, sure. You know, but now I charge money for a company to make a video because this is a job. And then they're like, oh, no, never mind. So, yeah, we'll see. You know, this telescope, no, it'll be horrible. 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 Yeah, I mean, the next star scopes are pretty good. The mounts are pretty lightweight, but I mean, at least you can still, they function and they can track and stuff. You know, here, this scope, nope. $26. Wow, horrible. Yeah, really bad. Nope. I mean, spotting scopes. You can see the moon with spotting scopes. All right, let's see if page 2 has any telescope that meets the minimum requirement. Nope. 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 Well, we have this one. It seems to think I want this one. I already have this scope, Amazon. Don't you know that? Actually, if I click on this, I bet there's a video of me using it on this page. Oh, come on. Can you go back? Let's see here. Again, thanks everyone for hanging out and helping me procrastinate from doing my homework. Yeah, there we go. They used a video here. And I guess maybe they didn't think I did a good enough job and they had someone else do one. Yeah. Anyway. Again, I'm pretty unfiltered in my opinions. And I feel like, you know, Celestron sent me a few telescopes, but I'm not sure they were super happy with my honesty because, like, now they don't return my emails. So, Chandler R says, "Can you repeat the minimum requirements?" Yeah, here's the requirements. Does the telescope have 4 inches of aperture? Right? Does it include a bullseye finder? You know, or a red dot. Like, it should not. A finder scope is usually a red flag that it's not a very good telescope. And then the other one just sort of have to know, can this telescope move left and right and up and down? So an EQ mount can't do that. So some people buy it as their first telescope, but the probability of you dropping the hobby because it's too much of a pain in the neck is pretty high. So like telescopes should move this way and this way, not incline to your latitude, whatever. Can the telescope balance precisely? And basically that means it should be able to balance, like in any position, right? Like a camera mount won't be able to do that. So it shouldn't look like this, right? A lot of that's a really big red flag. Yeah, and can it point straight up? So a lot of telescopes just simply can't point up. You have to look closely at the design, but like if we look at the travel scope here, which is the one I have right here, you know, this telescope can't point any higher than that. That's as high as it goes. And then if you were able to point it higher, it doesn't include a 90-degree diagonal. So this diagonal here, which is 45 degrees, is designed for looking at the ground. It's not designed for looking at space. So, you know, like to advertise that this scope could look at space is just very deceptive. So it's too bad. Okay. We'll move this out of the way so I can see here. All right. Yeah, process of weeding out the crap scopes is maddening. I live in China and it's double maddening due to having to translate everything into English. Yeah, I mean, that's why I try to just come up with this grid here. Be like, okay, well, what's your budget? And here are 4 scopes that fit that budget for your different requirements. And I guess in some cases, there's a couple different ones listed here. Like, you want to see deep sky objects, you know, and your budget is only $200, you know, where you've got only one option, right? So that's the way it is. Yeah, it is interesting. Like there's all these crap scopes, but a lot of the time there's only one. There's only one scope that will meet your criteria. And so a lot of people, as long as if they're commenting and they're saying, hey, what's and as long as I give enough information in the comment, I can usually answer that. Like, hey, my budget's $150 and I want to see Saturn, but I don't care about deep sky objects. Okay, well, there's an answer for that. Like, there's probably only 1 or 2 scopes that meet that criteria. You know, when they say, oh, I want to take photos of nebula, you can't really include a budget with that. Like, it's going to be $3,000. I want to, what's the best telescope for $700? Well, it's a Dobsonian telescope, like ideally with 8 inches of aperture. So, yeah. What's the favorite photo that you have captured? Oh, I could show you that. Here's some good ones. course, it would be annoying for me to put this back. These are from a long time ago, too. I haven't taken any ones recently. So, probably this one, Comet Neowise. This one, I think that's the Western Veil, the one that looks like a face. And then this was one of my first Andromeda Galaxy shots. And so I won this Science Photo Award thing in 2020 for our university with that. So that was back when I was still a humble astrophysics student. Of which I've now forgotten mostly everything. Now that I've gone the easy route and switched to space systems engineering. Yeah. Okay. Lawrence says, what's wrong with an optical finder scope? They're just hard to use. They're just a lot harder to use. The advantage to them is if they're good enough that they work as a telescope by themselves. That's the advantage of the finder scope. If you look in the finder scope and you can identify the deep sky objects in the finder scope, that's good. And then you just push the telescope over and then you look in the main telescope and it makes that deep sky object bigger. The other thing you can do with a finder scope is align if it's a computerized telescope, use the finder scope to help align it. And then it doesn't matter because then you never need to use the finder scope again for the rest of the night. So most finder scopes are too small and then they're reversed. So if you push the telescope one way, the stars shoot the other. And then they're just kind of hard. Have you ever captured Uranus or Neptune? Yeah, not necessarily good photos. I could show you photos I've taken of them with the school's telescope, which aren't even that good. Let's see here. Burt Gaffney Observatory. Let's see if I can hack into this. Robot telescope. Cues. Completed observations. Let's see here. See ones with my name on them. There we go. There we go. There's Uranus. How about that, huh? You can see some of its moons right there. It's not a color image. Take another picture of it a day earlier. Oh yeah, here's a few more. So those are its moons. There's the planet. Remember, Uranus is far away. What else have I been taking pictures of recently here? Oh, come on. Yeah. I don't even remember requests. It's been a while since I've used this telescope. Small globular clusters. And you guys can use this telescope too, you know. It's free to use on the internet. At least I think it still works. Yeah. Adaptive optics for amateurs. Is it possible? I don't think so. What does Saturn look like? Ugh, that's a terrible image. I don't know if I have any processed here. If I go back to processed. Wow, I've done 150 processed images. Some of these fail. Oh, there's a galaxy. So this is, using the university telescope, you can take the images and the different filters. So there's like red, green, blue, and luminance. And then you can send a command. Remember, if you don't know this already, you can access this telescope through Twitter Messenger. And there's just a command code that you can type in. But now you can then download this image. If I download it, open in Finder, open in GIMP. Here, and then there's the image. There's a galaxy in there, but you need to bring it out, and then you would export as a TIFF file so we can actually work with it. You'd say, just put that in the download folder. Okay. Now let's open it in Photoshop. And then you need to do what's called stretching the image. Which is just a mathematical thing. Like that. Now we're starting to see the galaxy. Again, this is processing basically an image from a professional telescope. And then we're going to open the layers menu. Crop off all the black. Go here again. Pretty noisy image. Probably could have done this better. And crop the galaxy. Sorry, I can't see the comments. Hope you find this interesting. They must not have been using what's been before the camera was calibrated. You can see some of those stars aren't round. We want to crop. And let's see, what else can we do here? This is not treating it like a science photo, just treating it like a pretty picture. Bring out some of the... So you want to make the sky look black again, but still have details in your galaxy. Right? This is kind of fun. I don't know if any of you have seen this done before, but this is sort of an easy way without PixInsight that you can play with your images. Then you denoise it, get the noise out of there. And another thing you can do in Photoshop with an action, I guess you got to pay money for this, is you can shrink your stars with this. It's this astronomy toolkit. I think it's like 20 bucks. And then there should be one that just says make stars smaller. And then because these stars look all bloated and crappy, yeah, make stars smaller. And so you can just hit this button a few times. And it'll shrink the stars. But then we got all this noise. All this noise started showing up. Maybe we don't want to do that. There's also a gradient here. So if I go and let's save this. And then there's this software I just discovered called Grap Expert or something. I don't know. Graxpert. Anyway, this is kind of cool because it'll take out that ugly gradient. And so you see how it's different color here than here? That's probably because the moon was in the sky or something. And so it actually thinks this is nebula. And so we got to tell it that that's not nebula. That's the sky. So we're going to put a bunch of data points here that aren't covering any stars. Like that. Now it knows that this area is not a nebula. And then, oops, hypothetically that should kill that gradient in the image. And then we can save it again. And then, oops, did it save it as a FITS file? Okay. Let's try this again. Save it as a TIFF file. Photoshop can't open FITS files. So, all right, TIFF file, go back into Photoshop. And now that gradient's gone, we could hypothetically go back. Sorry, I haven't checked the comments in a while. And make that sky look black again. Although it's kind of hard because there's a lot of noise in there. Still pretty noisy. Anyway, that might be how you process that image. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but there you have it. Kind of cool. So, yeah. What's we saying? Day after tomorrow, I have a science paper, but I give more value to your live stream. No, you should study for your homework. I should study for my homework. Yeah. So Bobby Fudge is saying StarSense Explorer DX130 is on sale. Yeah, we talked about that scope quite a bit. Love it. I have it. Just make sure you buy a laser collimator. And you'll probably want to upgrade the eyepieces too. So, and I recommend it a 10 millimeter Beta Hyperion eyepiece for planets and a 24 millimeter Beta Hyperion eyepiece for everything else. So, yeah. StarSense is just a lot of fun. As long as it's DX. So, someone says, can a 6-inch Dobsonian be used for astrophotography? Just planets, nothing else. I have a video idea. Why don't you take a picture of Uranus through your biggest or best telescope? We did a video on that. Actually, my wife did one. We go back here. You go back through the videos. Oh, I need to click on that. Say I want to look at videos. Yeah. That was the one. So I was on B&H Photo, and I just saw because the telescope was $34.
For some reason, see it, and then this knob.
Yes, this was during the peak of COVID when the kids were at home.
And build a star map. Then we'll use the bright stars as a guide.
So Jen was homeschooling, and I was doing the YouTube videos full time with a videographer, trying to build this channel up. And she's like, I've had enough. I can't do any more homeschooling. And so I just gave her the telescope and the videographer, and I had them make a video without me. Yeah, but then we ended up we brought this small $34 telescope out to see Uranus. It was really crappy telescope. And then we ended up, we did get a picture. Look at that. Oh no, that's with the Burke-Gaffney Observatory. Okay, that's not through this telescope. But anyway, there's a picture of Uranus, again, through the Burke-Gaffney. But that's pretty much exactly how it appeared. But this is through the 12-inch Dobsonian. And I've got my nice honkin' eyepiece on there. Yeah. This is a really funny video. I don't know if anyone watched to the end of this one. But we did a gag here where we put a giant price tag on the telescope. We multiplied the price by 100 and installed a camera. And we tried to see if anyone would steal the telescope. And I left all the instructions and everything on the giant price tag, and I just left it on the deck for 5 days. And nobody stole it. So, and we live in the city too. So what do you think if you put this telescope out in your neighborhood for 5 days with a big price tag on it? Do you think it would get stolen? Super curious. Yep. All right. Some more comments. King Kane, hello. Hilmi says, bro, skeleton. Actually, I've learned everything about the science apart from bio. Yeah, I can never do biology. My mom went to prepare for SST exam. Okay. When did you buy your first telescope? So my first telescope was basically this telescope, except even smaller. And I used it, and I could just barely see Saturn. And that was in 2009. I think I was 27 years old. But then I quickly went up and I got I did the ETX 60 next, which fails all my tests too. But I could actually start to pick out deep sky objects, at least as little smudges. And then I went right to the 12-inch Dobsonian. So I consider the 12-inch Dobsonian my first telescope. Hilmi, who said I just got beaten by Bell and T-Slipper? Okay. Comments are getting weird. Yeah, but I should sign off and eat lunch. Let's see how many people are on, just out of curiosity. This was great. Back to my channel here. Yeah, so thank you to the 18 of you watching. It has been a good morning of procrastination and answering all your questions on Amazon Prime Day. I'm curious to see how many people, actually watch this. A lot of people will go and they'll complain about my live streams because I don't cover enough stuff fast enough. Well, it's a lot different than a short form video where you're doing something, in a lot of depth for 10 minutes versus this, where it's just answering questions for, in this case, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. We got the core group here: Chandler, Lawrence, Shadow Gamer, Himley. It was great to have you guys all on. Bobby Fudge, if you're still there. Yeah. Kron, hello. Yeah, it was neat. We didn't have a lot of the usual folks on here. I think Shadow Gamer was a regular. Scotty H, yeah, I feel like we've seen him before commenting and stuff. So yeah, it was a good live stream. So thanks everyone for signing in. I'm gonna see if I can hit this stop button. I think next time I'll do this on a laptop so I have a second screen so I can put this somewhere else. Anyway, hope that was useful, and we'll catch you guys on the next live stream in a few months.